Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. This time I'm going to have a go at fitting a SCSI CD-ROM drive into my A2000. So we've got the 5 1/4 bay here. This will accommodate the drive that will fit internally. I've got an A2091, that's the official Commodore SCSI and RAM expansion in there at the moment, so I'll show you that. So hopefully you can just about see here, we've got a full-length A2091 card in here, and this provides SCSI. You can see the wide IDC connector here. It's 50 pin, it's a bit wider than the 40 pin IDE type connector. I'll show you this board in a minute, we'll have a look at it. But right now I just want to connect this up, see if I can install the drivers and see if I can get it working. Now there are a number of issues. Firstly, with SCSI you've got to terminate the chain. Under here, I'll show you in a sec, there are 3 resistor packs on this board which terminates this end of the cable with those resistors, but the other end you need to terminate also. Now on this drive you can see there's it says there term, the jumpers down here, those 2 terminated resistors, so you can either have it off or on. Well, it's not a resistor, it's a jumper, but you set that and then it'll terminate all the individual connections with resistors at this side of the connection. I think this is probably SCSI 1. You can get SCSI 2 and SCSI 3, and there's probably other more modern variants of SCSI. Now the only cable I've got to connect this up is a giant cable. Can you see it? It's got lots of connections. So you never know, I might need to trim this down. I'm not sure what the consequences of sticking the drive here, the controller here, that's sort of, I don't know, 20 centimetre long cable, and having it terminated at each point, so it might be okay, but the fact we've got this cable extended out then for a long distance, that could be an issue. I don't know, it's been many years since I looked at SCSI, and you know what, my exposure to SCSI was quite limited. I fitted the odd CD-ROM drive to a PC with a SCSI interface. Adaptec was quite a common brand at the time. I think what we'll do is we'll just pull the card out. So I cut a lot of footage out and I'm covering some old ground here, but it does mean there's been a jump in time. You can see here, well hopefully, a few things have happened to this board. I've got some version 7 ROMs, these are the original Commodore versions of these ROMs. Now there's a few things other to point out on here as well. This board is a SCSI controller, so you connect a SCSI hard drive up here and or the SCSI devices on that chain there, like CD-ROM drive, tape drive, etc, etc. You can see what looks like an IDE port here that's not fitted. That is for an IDE connector, 40 pin IDC, but it's the XT format, which was kind of like a precursor to IDE. It's an 8-bit format, and I think some of the original cards, some of these original A2091s that shipped, came with a 20 meg hard disk that was perhaps using that, and it would have had the connector fitted there. What I do understand is I think with the version 7 ROMs you lose compatibility with that if you're going to use that. But I think you'd find it hard to find an IDE, an 8-bit IDE XT drive to go with one of these. It's got the power connector on board. They don't recommend using that, and I'll tell you why later on when we talk more about some of the things I had to do to this. So the main chip here is the DMAC chip. This one is an O2-02 rev. The DMAC chip you'll see on an Amiga 3000 and on CD-TV, and I think also if you get the A590 sidecar attachment for the Amiga 500, that's got a DMAC chip in as well, probably the same revision. It might be an 01 because I think there is an earlier 01. So this chip provides DMA support here. You've got some RAM on board here. It holds 2 meg. These are 44256 chips, a bit like you get on the Rev 6 A2000 motherboards, or on an A500 Plus. I think there's some of the A500s, the same ones, don't they? The Rev 6 has got those chips as well, hasn't it? Yeah, you've got space for 8 of them, haven't you, in total? So you've got half meg, 2 meg in total. These were not socketed previously. I'll talk about that more as we go through the video here. So you can see we've got some jumpers up here to set the amount of RAM. There's 0, half meg, 1 meg, 2 meg. And there's a few options here that relate to the SCSI side of things, to do with I think a delayed wait for the drive to become available. I think that first one perhaps does that. There's one for SCSI LUNs and IDs and stuff like that. I honestly don't know exactly what that's for. And then there's a jumper down here that says auto at the bottom, and if you put it in the up position it's dis, and that disables the onboard ROMs here so that it won't auto boot from the hard disk or whatever you've got connected. And finally we've got an LED connector up here that you can connect to your case LED. So these originally shipped in a couple of different A2000 models. You got the A2000HD, so that was the the 2000 that contained a hard disk, and then it also shipped in the A2500, which comprised of an A2091 with a hard disk and an A2630 like this here. So as someone said in a previous video, because I have both of these cards now, it means in theory if I put these in my 2000, I've got an A2500, an A2500. So I cut a lot of footage out of this. I spent ages looking at this back end of last year, and then it just went on hold while I started to look at other things, including some of the Archimedes. So the first thing I did is, as I say, swapped out these ROMs. So I dumped the old ones. I think I had 6.6 on here. In fact, the old ROM labels are here. Can you see this? I just taped them on rather than just binning them, just so you could see what its history was, what it actually shipped with. Version 6.6. So I've upgraded to version 7. You can get different versions of version 7. You can get a patched version of these ROMs that supports 14 MHz mode better. And when I say better, I'll sort of come back to that in a second. The chip here, can you see? This is the main drive controller chip, and it's a WD33C394A-PL, and the revision number here 00-08. That 08 is important. The one that was on here was -04, and it says at the bottom proto, so you could have thought actually it's a prototype, but they all ships like that. And the -04 is not as compatible with, well, two things: larger hard drives and I think CD-ROM support. So you may find, and this is the problem I was running into last year when I started looking at this, if you connect a SCSI CD-ROM drive up, it probably, more likely than not, won't work. So it's beneficial to upgrade this chip, replace this chip. It's socketed as default, and I didn't show you that, but I pulled that clip. Just pull it out. Put an 08 in there. So the one thing I'll point out with this, it was very hard to find a -08. There are a seller or two on eBay, and I have bought probably 4 of these in total from different sellers, and 3 of them were fakes. And when I say fakes, they look absolutely brand new. The pins are all coated in solder as if they've been reclaimed or something, but the label is like super dark black with a super white print, and it just looks fake from the minute you see it. And you plug it in, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything at all. Nothing. You won't even see anything on the SCSI chain there. So yeah, you've been warned. If you're going to look for a -08, you just bear in mind you might get some fakes before you eventually land on a good one. So I was getting nowhere with that CD-ROM drive, so I've ordered an SCSI2SD, as you can see. This is there's a new one. I think there's a version 6 now. This is a 5.1. Well, I think on the website it says it's 5.3 or something else. It might be the board's 5.1, but the firmware's slightly later. It's got an SD card already in there, 16 gig, which is nice. Although I'm not going to be able to utilise that space, I don't think. A 2 gig is probably going to be more than sufficient. I might see if I've got a 2 gig. So obviously, you plug this into the SCSI cable there, power it, and you've got SCSI hard disks. This can provide up to 4. Now I think the way you connect this up, you've got to have a little micro, is it? It's the smallest type of USB connector there. Connect it to the PC, run some software. The software is available on different platforms, I think, like Windows, Mac, might be Linux as well. And then you can configure it. So we'll configure this into 4 drives of 256 meg, I think. Just notice there, those pins will look joined. They might not be. It just looks like there's a blob of 4 joined together. I'll check that on magnifier in a minute, and it's got a DB25 connector as well, which is nice. You could fit if you wanted one. I thought it'd be good to try and get it working with this, in a hard disk, and then we could perhaps try adding the CD-ROM and see if we can make some more progress with the CD-ROM once we've got, a SCSI hard drive there. I've been using the cable I use with my PS4 cable, actually. The PS4 charge cable there for the controller. It's exactly the right type. So I've connected up to the PC USB port there with the cable I use with my PS4 controller, and we launch the XC. I'm sorry about the refresh rate here, but once that loads up, you just do, where has it gone now? Load from device. So as you can see here, it's reading from the flash array on the device there. It's got a little Cypress chip, which I think is a USB host, but it's an MCU as well, and that's what's doing the drive emulation here. And then once that's loaded, You've got the standard configuration settings here that relate to all of the drives, you know, the main interface. So you can see you can enable SCSI 2 mode. So, you know, if you've got SCSI 2 drives, you'll get better performance, I guess. Enable unit attention, not sure what that does. Enable parity. Yeah, some drives and things and systems need parity enabled. Disable glitch filter. I've not needed to use that. If you hover over it, it gives you a little hint. It says improves performance at the cost of noise immunity. And then you've got enable disk cache. I've enabled that just to get a little bit extra performance. It says SD-IO commands aren't completed when SCSI commands complete. So you've got a little bit of a buffer going on there. Enable SCSI disconnect, respond to short SCSI selection pulses, and then the bottom one is map LUNs to SCSI IDs. I talked about that before in terms of one of the jumpers on the A2091. I'm not really sure how that's used, where that's used. I haven't needed to. I did at various points when I was having problems try and change these options and things to work out whether it had any bearing on the problem, and it didn't seem to make any difference when I either set that or changed the one on the card. It didn't make a difference at all. And at the top there you've got SCSI host speed, normal or slow. Well, we'll leave it on normal. And right up here you've got enable SCSI termination, version 5.1 only. So I've got that enabled, so I don't need to do anything additional in terms of termination. As I set up this card in a minute, I can literally just plug it into the SCSI cable. It's already terminated at the A2091 end, and because we've got that ticked, we shouldn't need to do anything further. And then you've got the little tabs there for each of the drives. So this is device 1, device 2, device 3, device 4. So if I go back to device 1, so you set the SCSI ID here. They've all got to have a unique ID. So we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. That's what I've gone with. The CD-ROM drive, I'll show you later. Well, I think I set that to 5 actually when I played with that last autumn/winter. So I think that's probably still set to 5. If it's not, I can remember I think what the jumper setting was for that. And you can see you specify the drive type, hard drive. So you can actually emulate a CD-ROM if you wanted to, or a removable disk. Anyway, I don't see any need to do that. So I've just set these 4 drives up as hard drives. They've all got their own ID. Where you go. And then down here you've got SD card start sector. It starts on 0. By the time you get to the second drive, if you tick the auto tab there, it will automatically populate that according to the size of the first drive. So you don't really need to worry so much about the values of these things if you tick the auto. I've deliberately separated them by a certain amount. The reason being is I was having some problems and I just wanted to rule out they weren't overlapping with each other in any kind of way, but trust me they're not. I think it was other issues which we'll get onto later in this video. So my initial drive size, I went with 950 meg. Now that's relatively small. I've got a 16 gig SD card in here. And there's a reason for that. Because I'm using the A2091, the A2091 install disk came supporting Kickstart and Workbench 1.3-ish, maybe even 1.2, but I think 1.3-ish is what you needed. And there's a limit there on the partition size and drive size. I think if you go over like a gig, it could be a problem. It might go up to 2 gig, but I think it's actually less. I think it's like anything over about 950 meg, you're going to start having issues with that version of Kickstart and that version of Workbench. So I went with a drive 950 meg, and as you'll see, we'll partition that into 2 halves, just less than 500 meg each. The idea being that at least I can install the, from the install disk that came with the A2091. If you just jump straight to Kickstart 3 onwards and Workbench 3 onwards, you could probably go larger, and the partition size could probably go larger. There are still some limits there depending on what version you've got. You'd probably need to go up to some of the very latest versions that have been patched to get ridiculous size disk support, and there might be other things you need to do as well. That's not covered within this video. I've just gone with let's say 2 basic small less than 500 meg partitions on a less than 1 gig drive to get going. So I appreciate I've skipped a lot of steps out here, but I thought I'd just capture this at this stage. And I'll have a step back in a minute and I'll show you what I've done to get to this point here where we're formatting DH0. Now the interesting thing is, there's some weird things going on with the partitioning software. I set it to 512 meg partition, and it didn't seem to let me create another partition on the same drive, which is really weird. So I don't know if I need to format it first and then I can create another partition or what. So that's the road I've taken for the moment. So you can see it's formatting a cylinder and then verifying it. It's taking forever. The SD card light, you know, is flashing on the SCSI2SD board there. I'll show you that in a second. But this is going to take, I don't know, an hour or more, I think. So yeah, I'll report back when this is done. Yeah, you can see the LED there. Every time it does the format, that LED lights up, I think. So at the end of that process there, it said initializing disk, and then it looks like it's reset. In fact, it's crashed. Software failure. So I've rebooted it myself, and let's see what difference that makes. Yeah, as you can see, the drive LED is frozen there, and the LED on there is frozen. So I'm not sure that's been successful. So showing you what's required here, I'm booting from the A2091 install disk. I think the first thing we need to do is go into HD Toolbox and partition the 4 drives. Now I've been around this process a number of times here, and I kid you not, I've spent days on this. I've gone round and round and round. So this must be the 5th or 6th attempt at doing this, and I think hopefully I've got the process right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is change drive type. The default types that are listed here aren't applicable, so you do define a new one, read from the drive. Now I wouldn't leave it at the default it comes up with here. We could try it. Let's try it. Let's just go with it. Because one of the tutorials I saw had a higher number of blocks per track. I think the example was to half the cylinders and double the blocks per track. I'm not sure we're going to need to do that. So we'll just click OK and we'll just go with it. We've got a new type there, look defined, so click OK. That's that one done. So we'll do the same for the other 3. So that's them all done. So I'll now click on partition drive, and we'll just go with the default. So as you can see, that's got DH0 and DH1, and only DH0 is bootable. So click OK. Let's just check the next one. Now the interesting thing is it's got another DH0. I don't know why you would want to do that. So we'll change that to we'll have 2 and 3. So we've got 0 and 1. We'll have 2 and 3, and we don't want it to be bootable. So you've got to untick that as well. So it's a bit annoying that it doesn't automatically name these appropriately. Same again, 4 and 5. And the final one, 6 and 7. And we need to save changes for each one of those drives. And I think we can exit then. Let's now try install HD and see what happens. I'm not sure if we need to format before we can do that. This will install on DH0, so yeah, we'll choose yes. At various points it will ask for Workbench here, so I've got my 1.3 discs ready. That will install 1.3 on there. So once that's, there you go, there's the first disc. So once that's completed, it should boot up to 1.3. At that point, you can upgrade to 3.1. Now I'm going to do that later. What I want to do is format all the other drives and partitions and then test it a little bit, copying files around before I upgrade to 3.1. So that didn't work, and I've forgotten how painful this initial part was. It was coming up saying DH0 does not exist kind of thing, because I haven't actually formatted it. The system's not aware of DH0 at this stage. And then I power cycled it. And then the LED on here just kept flashing off and on, and it kept rebooting the machine. So I had to change the jumper down here to disable the boot ROM. But the drive should be still detectable, they just won't boot. So I think what I need to do, I need to go in here and I need to somehow format that drive. So we'll see if I can get into the format option and just see if I can format it directly. What you can do is run the HD prep thing, but that just like partitions the drive for you and I think formats it as well. But I don't want it altering the partition. Let's try format HD, let's try that. And that's going to take a period of time. So that format completed, but not only that, all the other hard disks actually appeared on the desktop, all 8 of them. So I think we've turned a corner, because I wasn't seeing that before. I only had like DH0 and DH1, well I've got all the way up to DH7 on the desktop there as icons. So using a multitasking here, I'm formatting DH1 and DH2 at the same time, and at the same time I've been installing Workbench 1.3. So as you can see, I managed to set up WinUAE there with the A2091 as a SCSI controller, and I mounted the SD card there as a drive. I'll show you the settings for that in a second. Sorry the camera's wobbling a little bit, I'm having to hold it. I've booted Workbench there, 3.1 install disk, and it's now installing it to that image, the hard disk image on the SD card. So I've literally spent hours trying to get the second, third and fourth hard disk to appear. The SD card is split into 4 drives there. I've got ID0, ID1, ID2 and ID3. So the first one was quite small. It was split into 2 512 meg partitions. But then I went up to 1900 meg for the remaining 3 drives. Now I'll show you a few things here. If you go into Workbench, and straight away you'll notice I've only got 2 icons there. I've got the games, which is the second partition, Workbench is the first partition of the first drive. But if I go into, let's say, where's it gone now? Tools. Is it Tools? No, it's not. System. Hang on, I'm trying to find it. Because one of these here, there you go, Format. I thought, let's go into Format, let's try that. And you'll see here, the drives are actually listed. So I've got DH0, DH1, DH2, 3 and 4. So the 2, 3 and 4 are the 1900 meg ones. You can't format them. I'll show you. If I try and format DH2 and I do a quick format, it says yeah, ready to format, and then it says are you sure? No disk in drive. Apparently this is a bug with the file system here. Is it? I forgot what the file system is. Is it FFS or something like that? But it's a bug. If the first number of bytes in the first cylinder there, FFFFFF or something, confuses it and thinks there's no disk in. So I'm not entirely sure how to resolve this. I think from what an article I've just read, someone suggested making sure you properly initialize it. So let's do that. Let's go into HT Toolbox. Let's just see if there's any way in here to actually properly do a full initialize or format of the drive. And it does say preparation, partitioning and formatting to this utility. It's very difficult to understand what to do about this though. I tried various things. There were some guides suggesting adding some stuff into the mount list. That makes no difference. I've tried that. It makes no difference at all. So there's our second drive, and we can low level format it. And if you do a low level format, it's instant look and it just says empty. Save changes. Verify, no data on the drive will be changed. Well, we don't want to do that. The problem is it's only a low level format and it's quick, so I'm honestly not sure what to do about that now. So after much messing around and searching on Aminet and various places, I found a forum thread with a format utility which I think might solve the problem. So I connected the SD card up to WinUAE on my PC, copied it across, and that's the easy way to transfer files with one of these SD to SCSI. Let's try it. GUI format. We'll leave a trash can on it and we'll do quick format. So it is actually formatted now. So let's see what happens. Will we get an icon on the desktop? That's the thing. I'm not seeing any drive here. It's taking quite a while. That. Oh, we've got a drive! Hooray! Fantastic. That has worked. That has solved the problem. So what the issue is at default the SD card has probably got ones written to it. Binary ones. Everything's set to high. So if you read like a sector on there, it'd be FF or FFFF, and that's where you get the disk is ejected thing when you try and use the normal format utility. So I can't believe how long that has took me to work out. Actually, that is incredible how difficult it was to work out. So let's format that one. I'll do the same with the others and I'll report back in a minute. So the other thing that was happening was crashes when copying games from one drive to another. So for example, I was copying, I think about 80 meg of games from DH1 to DH2, and I've tried it a number of times, and every time it would crash after about, I don't know, 20 or 30 meg was copied so far. The system would just then crash, and you wouldn't be able to get back into, get it to boot again. I'd have to take the SD card out, put it into the PC, boot Win UAE, bring it back in here, then it would detect the drive and say the drive's corrupt, DH2, the one I was copying to. So I'd then format it again. Now I've tried doing this here, a full format, as you can see, and the furthest I could get was about 10% of the way along here, and then it would crash, and the same thing would happen. I'd have to put the card in the PC, boot Win UAE, then bring it back in here, then it'd say it was corrupted, then I'd have to start formatting again. I decided to disable the RAM on the card here. So that's exactly what I've done. I've disabled it, so there's 0 of the 2 meg here in use. And actually, that seems to have solved it, I think. I mean, I could be speaking too soon. But I kid you not, when it comes to, large operations like copying large amounts of files or something like this, where it's actually hammering the disk for a very long period of time, this has took about 30 to 40 minutes here to format DH2. I think it's 2 gig partition. Yeah, it looks like it's going to complete, doesn't it? So I'm not really sure what the cause of that is going to be, because if I do a RAM test on it, if the RAM tests out fine, I could leave it going for an hour and the RAM is fine, no issues at all. Now I say an hour, I don't think I've tested it for an hour. I tested it for about 15 minutes, it went through about 20 or 30 times and it said it was fine, no issues. But maybe something is occurring under load. Or maybe we've got a problem with the DMAC chip there, because I'm guessing that is used, it's like a DMA controller, isn't it, effectively, I think. Could be wrong. But the RAM all tests out alright, it's warm. It's not as warm as it was before, no, it's not in use. So I think the next thing I might do, I'll wait for this to complete, we'll copy some files, we'll see if that works. If that works, then it is a clue there is definitely something with the RAM on here, or the DMAC chip. So I think at that point we'll take these chips out that are socketed, take the DMAC out, clean up the sockets there with a bit of vinegar and stuff, and maybe a bit of deoxit. Clean the sides of the chip there with the fiberglass pen, and I may even do the same with this RAM and reseat all of this RAM here, and then just, I don't know, test it again. We'll try the same thing with DH3, we'll try formatting it, try copying files to it with the RAM enabled, and see what happens. In the meantime, I've ordered some more of these RAM chips. I've got, I think, 4 or so, maybe 8 of these spare myself, but yeah, I wanted some more, so I could just try swapping a bank at a time and repeat the test there of, copying, I don't know, 70 or 80 mega files and see if it crashes. Well, it has nothing to do with the RAM, because it just bombed out again just copying some files there. After about 15 meg worth of files from one drive to another, it reset the machine. So I don't know what's going on. So we'll get the DMAC chip out and we'll clean the sides of the chip and the socket up if we can. Is it going to come out? Yeah, there we go, so caught on one side, let's just carefully. Yeah, so I stopped at that point just because I don't want to damage the socket, I just want to try and lift if I can. That's there, see I'm not levering it, I'm just lifting it. Yeah, because it went at a weird angle, look. So yeah, the sides of the chip look okay, but anyway, we'll clean the inside of that. I don't know, maybe they are a bit weathered. Yeah, we'll clean the inside of that socket up. We'll do the same thing with the socket here. I'll get some vinegar into there. I might get a bit of vinegar in there now, actually, just brush around that a little bit. And then and the same with this one, and then maybe we'll do the RAM. I'm using vinegar because IPA is not going to get any oxidisation off there. Obviously deoxit or something is the best thing to use. I've got some deoxit, so I might go over this with the deoxit afterwards. Anyway, we'll dry that up, and then I'll clean it down with some IPA. I'm not going to bother doing the ROM sockets. I'll tell you why, because when I swapped out the ROMs originally, upgraded them, programmed version 7 on there, I cleaned the sockets at that point, but I didn't do anything with the DMAC chip. that went in very firmly, so let's just mop up the IPA from around there. I'll clean the pins on the DMAC chip next, I think. So pin 1 markings up there, and there's a little chamfer there which corresponds with the corner of that, so just carefully set that in the right place and push it in like that. In retrospect, I remember cleaning up the socket for this actually. I think that socket is okay. Got some little marks on the SCSI cable here, but yeah, they're just little scratches, there's no damage to it. So, I mean, beyond that, it can't be the RAM though, because we just ruled out the RAM. So, I don't know. Maybe it's worth changing those 3 caps out. We've got a couple of caps there, and there's a cap here. Might be worth just checking those for ESR. I think the other thing I'll do is just clean up the edge here with some IPA as well before I retry. So just trying to test on the Rev 4 board here. I've relocated everything, including the Kickstart ROM. It wasn't doing anything at all, so I've removed the resistor pack there and the resistor pack there, which are the same on the Rev 6 board. And I've had a few people saying you don't need them on this Rev board, so I've removed them. It didn't make a difference. I also fitted on the underside, I'll show you in a minute, 2 resistor packs here. Now I didn't have 3K3s, I only had 4K7s. So yeah, I've temporarily put some 4K7s on to test. It still wasn't booting. So the third thing, as you can see I've done here, is fitted the 030 here, 68030. And lo and behold, it's booted with all the drives showing. So the whole purpose of me trying to do this and all the messing around I've just done there is to see if this board is any different with this card. So if I go into, where's it gone now, here, and try and copy A there onto DH2, see what happens with that. Is that going to crash as well, or will that complete? Let's just let that run through. So the first thing that crossed my mind actually, whilst that's copying away that, is it this Signetics 68000 that's the issue? Because I know they can vary a little bit in terms of how strong they pull certain signals. So some of those 68000, depending on the manufacturer, you can have some weird issues where you need to have pull-ups and stuff. I'm wondering if this is one of them. Maybe this is one of the ones that needs the packs here. I think what I'm going to do actually is just swap the processor over from the other board, remove the 68030 and test that to rule that out. But you can see some of the issues you get here with compatibility between different versions of Zorro cards with different motherboards. I'd be surprised if back in the day, if you got one of these A2091s, if it wouldn't work in a Rev 4 board without having to do mods. But then again, there's quite a few mods you seem to have to do for certain things on these boards. What I'm not clear on is exactly, the resistor packs, for example, that you stick on these 245s, I think they are here. What specifically was that originally aimed at? Was there a specific card or a few different cards that they identified it needed to be there for? That information seems to have been lost along the way in history. I'm sure there's probably somebody watching this who knows precisely where about that fix came into play, and it may well affect all cards, I don't know, but I just find it strange that you'd need to do so many of these little small mods and things depending on what it is you want to get running with it. Oh my god, it completed without an error. So maybe there's something else wrong with that other board in terms of the Zorro stuff, or maybe it's yet another incompatibility. It's amazing it's working on here. What I'd like to do though, as I say, try and boot this with a straight 68000 and see if it works as well, but we managed to copy the A folder. I think that's on the other drive actually. Let's just have a look. Yeah, that's that one. Close. Going to DH2. There it is, A. And all the games are on there. Sweet. Right, let's do what I talked about. Let's remove that processor and change over to the other one. Now, I've swapped over to the Motorola processor here. It's doing exactly the same thing. If you watch the LED down there, it does start to flash as if it's trying to boot from the drive, but it just gives up. And then at some point we get an error on the screen as well, like a guru. And it resets as well, you'll get like a flash on the screen. So, I don't know, I find it really mysterious that it will work with 68030, but it won't boot. with a straight 68,000 on this particular board. I just don't understand why I can't get an A2091 working 100% properly on its own with a 68,000. Why does it need an 020? What is going on here? Speed Geek here from Amiga, who's based in Wisconsin in the good old US of A, posted, I think actually he's the guy that did a 50 megahertz conversion to one of these A2630s, is it? I think he did. I just remember that name. Anyway, yeah, so he posted an article on Amiga. So in the Commodore service manual, it tells you to cut that and then join the bottom two, but that, for one reason or another, doesn't work. So it might be a mistake in the documentation there. He works out that you join the first pin to the third pin. There's also a utility that you might need to run as well, because as default when this chip boots it puts it in the wrong mode, so you can get some issues with SCSI timings and things. So if it works, great, but ultimately you would want to run that utility that somebody's provided, and I've got it somewhere. I think it's on DH1 on here actually. Yeah, maybe run that boot, or just after you boot, to to tweak the settings on here, not chip, in order that you get the timings just right and stuff. But in theory I think it should boot without that. We should just be able to see some performance gain. But one thing I did read is that these are not designed really to run, or it's designed to run from a minimum of 8 megahertz, and actually this is running at 7 megahertz at the moment. We're doubling it to 14, so it's kind of under spec as things are at the moment. It is designed to go, I think, up to 14, maybe even beyond, and your success might vary on the quality of what you've got on here. Let's just measure those 2 pins there. Yeah, so those top 2 are definitely joined to each other. Two. So if we cut that into 3 pins, there we go. So I've got our jumper, flip it over. You can see I also had a jump here. Can you see this? This is one of the things I did early on. Put another 3 pins here. Originally this was, I think it's bridged to int, I forgot which side I pulled it off there, int 2 is it? And you can swap it to int 6. Why you would need to do that I don't know, but whenever I see options like that generally I'll add them. But I hadn't spotted the other one for the 14 megahertz there. So we just need to join the outer ones with a wire. So where's the jumper? Flip it that way, get a little wire. There we go. And it only needs to be short, but I'm going to loop it anyway like that. There we go, isn't it? Look. So following on from those live stream clips, we were in a situation where this board, with a straight 68,000, in fact both boards, with straight 68,000 and not having the 030 board in there, the 2630, I was finding it really intermittent in terms of trying to get it to boot. So what I assumed was that maybe the 2630 being plugged into the slot here was providing some additional capacitance. Now, the other thing I did is I experimented with the slot position, and I'll be honest, that does have a bearing, depending on what configuration you've got, whether you've got a CPU card in there or not. On the other board, I found if you've just got a straight 68,000, no accelerator card, it's happier with this board further to the left. It's like the nearer you get to the slot, the more chance on the other board, the F4 board, of it not booting. Now that may indicate that the Rev4 board needs some mods. It might need the resistor arrays underneath the 245s here or something similar. On the other board I removed the 2 resistor arrays as I showed earlier from this position here, and I tested with and without them. I put them back on and retested. It didn't seem to make a difference. So on the other board I've left them off, just like you get on here on a Rev6 board, where those the inner resistor packs are not there. You still got these 2 here, those are essential I think, but these 2 aren't. So inspecting around the board, you will see there are barely any capacitors on there. Now there's lots of ceramics, but those aren't sufficient. You've got one which is was a 22. I've upgraded that to a 47, and there are two 22s down here again that I've swapped out. Now these are 22s that I've fitted. My advice is I would uprate them all to 47s, if I'm honest. So I mean, I might do that. I just didn't have any Panasonic, so these are kind of like a no-name brand. But the ESR is the key thing here. Now I'll show you the other ones, the ones I've took off. So the caps I've fitted are quite low ESR. These are like 0.6 roughly, each one of them. But if we look at the ones I took off, we'll just connect these up to the meter here. As you can see, look at that, 2.8 ohms. That's like 3 ohms. Now, that's probably not too far out of spec from when they were originally manufactured, you know, because it's going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. And these are old caps, but I mean, look at that one again, 2.6. These are like more than resistors than caps. Now, that isn't the entire issue. There's more to this than meets the eye. That isn't just the thing that makes the difference here. That one's a bit lower, 1.57. But as you can see, those had kind of turned into resistors. And there's only 3. This is the key thing here. There's only 3 small capacitors on that board. So that could make a huge difference. And as I talked about a few minutes ago in the stream video, the jumper here to switch between 7 and 14 megahertz, yeah, there was a bug, you know, a mistake, if you like, on that board. So you had to join pin 1 to 3, and you can see I just made this tiny little loop thing to join the pins 1 and 3 to put it in 14 megahertz. It's a TIAC CD-ROM. You can see, looks like a what's his name thing, doesn't it? Like a bingo ticket, a raffle draw. Yeah, number 228, you've won the CD-ROM drive. That's what it looks like. In terms of testing, we have got, yeah, we've got a headphone jack there, brilliant. I've got some headphones somewhere on the table up there, so I can test that, assuming we get it working. I think we just need to pull that off and stick it on the bottom of that little bank of 4 there. Yeah, termination off, because I've got termination on the SCSI thing there, which I think means this needs to sit somewhere in the middle of the cable. From when I messed with this last time, I remember ID5 being it's one and the other, so you have a gap in the middle. That was ID5 when I tested that back in January, but I couldn't get couldn't get it working. It wouldn't work at all. You see the key there, which corresponds with the back of the drive that you probably can't see. So if we just connect that up. So I've got power, so let's switch it on, just see what happens. So you can't see the LED on that. Oh, that's flickering, I think you can see that. We haven't got any CD icon or anything there, have we? Let's just go into IDE fix. Now when I installed this yesterday, I set up with a default of 5, I think, to correspond with what I thought the SCSI CD-ROM drive was set to. Find device, there it is, come on. So if we do find device, and we click SCSI.device, oh there it is, look. Unit 5, TIAC, CD-ROM, CD532S1A. So what do we choose? Use? Eject CD, let's try that. So it's giving us a little thing up here, look. Oh yes, it works, fantastic. There you go, it was that simple. So I'm glad I installed IDE fix actually, because it looks like that was all I needed. There you go. I mean, I still don't see a drive letter or an icon or anything like that. Play CD. So that says number 112. I think that's working, isn't it? We've got the list of tracks here. So let me just put the headphones up, see if we can hear anything. So let's do 1. Yeah. Can you hear that? Sweet. If we just do a speed test now, if we go to, let's just do it on DH5, we'll click speed. Yeah, as you can see, 1308. I'll just run that again, just to see what it's coming out at. We'll do it a couple of times, just see what the average is. 1302, do it again. And then I'll switch it over into 14 megahertz mode, the SCSI controller. Yeah, 1293. So testing it again at 14 megahertz. took an incredible amount of time to boot, I've got to admit. The more SCSI drives you on, look at that, 2 meg. So there is a speed increase there. It's not double, but yeah, 2.1 meg. 2125, look, and do it again. 2142, so yeah, a nice speed boost there from increasing the controller speed to 14 megahertz. The SCSI2SD can only go up to, I think, a theoretical 1.1 meg per second. So the bottleneck is in this, this can only go that fast, it can't go any faster. Now if you get the 6 points whatever onwards, it can go much faster, twice as fast, I think. But yeah, the bottleneck is here. So the final thing, to get the CD icon up there, so that when you put a data disk in, it displays on the desktop there. One of my subscribers, I think, posted a link on the live stream video below, and he sent me a link to this. If you have LCD file system, then do this. It says copy device from sys storage DOS drivers file and .info file, copy into sys devs DOS drivers /CDO, and that's exactly what I did. So I copied that into that specific folder there, and then you right click and look at tool types, and just there's a few parameters there. Activate equals 1, device SCSI.device. You probably need to change that if you're using a different SCSI driver. So if you had a, I don't know, a GVP SCSI card, they put something like GVP SCSI.device or SCSI GVP. I can't remember exactly what the device driver's called on that. Unit equals 0. This is the SCSI ID, so I just changed that to 5, saved it, and that's it. It works. When I boot it now, it will always show the the drive icon there. The one thing I did find is if I don't have a data disk in the drive, it takes forever to boot. So I now have to leave a data disk in the CD-ROM drive. In terms of this video, I haven't shown me installing this into my proper A2000 case. I'll revisit when we do some other things to my A2000 later. I did some other stuff to do with setting up a hard disk, which would be a separate video there, and a proper physical SCSI hard disk, a hard drive, rather than an SD adapter. And I'll have to go for a few days doing a format, a low-level format, because the drive that I got was completely, foobar. And ultimately the system rebooted a few times, which would have messed the format up even further, and then ultimately it killed my 4000. But this has now been playing up. I can't get this working with the SCSI2SD, it's not doing anything at all. I've done all sorts of different things here to rule things out. I've had the logic probe on some of the chips and things here. I don't see any issues. I've looked at the schematics, I'll show you those in a second. Just to rule them out, I'm going to just remove the 245s down here, because I think that's where the data bus access comes through to, I forget which, it's either the DMAC or this or both. I want to just rule these out by socketing them up and being able to swap them. There's room for a socket, as you can see, because that's socketed there, that PAL. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do next, and I'll show you the schematics in a sec. So there we go, that's both chips off, no damage. There's the odd bit of solder mask removed there, it's quite hard to avoid doing that. And you can see no damage on that side. And all I did to free them up, because it still hadn't removed the solder very well on this side, I put this here, tilted it on its side, and just heated here with 400 degrees, went round in circles, preheated a little bit first, and then just zoomed in on the pins, went up and down for about 10 seconds, and it just pulled out. Dead easy, no damage, no delamination or anything like that. So get some sockets on there, and I'm going to try some replacement 245s to see if that makes any difference at all. So just looking at the A2091 schematics here, these are available online. I think there's a service manual for this, which is surprising. So the first page here, we've got the WD33C93, the DB25 connector there, and our 40-pin XT connector there. That's not the right page, is it? Yeah, so on this page here, you can see the bus transceivers here, 74LS245, so we've got both of them there, and yeah, the data bus is going to be coming from the Zorro side of things, I think, and then the other side of these is going straight to the DMAC. So yeah, I think there is advantage in taking these out, swapping them with some brand new 74LS245s just in case they're glitching. But I'll be honest, my primary reason to remove this, or remove these chips, is to consider fitting maybe an ALS 245 or a HCT 245, because I've got this theory that there's a few issues been going on here. It's got a bit better with each of the things I've done. It's got a little bit better. The capacitors did make a difference. Like boot reliability has been an awful lot better between both boards. Well, 100% better on both boards. But we're still left at the end of all of the things I've done within this video. Still left with a scenario where you copy large files and it balks. You know, it crashes. Always on a large file, nearly always at the same point. So I think it's about the level transitions, you know, how these signals are driven depending on the chips that are here, or timing. So I swapped the chips there for brand new 74LS 245s. Didn't make a difference. The other reason, as I say, I removed these is I thought, let's try some other types of chips in here. So I fitted the different manufacturers here, but a couple of 74ALS 245s. So these are advanced low power shotkeys. The response, I think the timing is quicker and they can sync more current and stuff, I think. So anyway, and these are what they recommend to fit sometimes on the board in the Zorro positions there, you know, I'm not sure about the data bus positions, but in other positions to do with the Zorro slot. And lo and behold, that has fixed it 100%. It is now 100% reliable on all 4 machines here. So my 3 different A2000 revisions, it works perfectly in. You can copy large files, it boots every time. No instability issues, copying large files, no issue at all. That completely solved it. Now, before I tried them here, I had them on the motherboard because they're socketed up on one of the boards there, and it was the same thing. You got the same behaviour. It worked perfectly. But what I decided to do was leave the LS chips on that A2000 board there and put the ALS ones on here. And I'm glad I did that because I still had some instability on the A4000. So the very fact that this has got ALS chips on here means that it works on all 3 MA2000s and the A4000 as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when I was doing some formats of a SCSI Seagate drive there, you know, a real hard disk, it was going for a few days and the temperature in here was incredibly hot during the day and freezing cold at night, and I had to leave it going. That was ultimately what killed my A4000 board. It was a follow-on fault, as you'll see, so it was kind of not unexpected. When it happened, as you'll see, I'll be like, okay, I saw that when I was doing some testing, but it was only pretty random. It only happened a couple of times, and hence why I kept the A board and gave the good one to Stephen, because, like I say, there were some issues with the A4000 I kept. But anyway, that's a separate video, and it is fixed. That killed the SCSI2SD as well, but I fixed that as well. That's a separate video. This is the first A2000 board I showed on my channel, repaired it. You know, got some green solder mask paint here. And this board now is 100% with this card too. So I did some mods to this. I removed the resistor packs that were down the sides here to bring it in line with the other Rev 6 board I think I've got. But the other thing I did is fit the resistor arrays on the underside of the 245s there. But having done that, and in conjunction with the 74 ALS 245s chip that I fitted to the A2091 there, it's rock solid on this board as well, and this is a real accomplishment for me personally because I've really struggled with this board. This board has been the worst out of the 3 different A2000 boards I've got. When you do a large file copy, as I'm doing here, and this has been going for about 20 minutes so far, it takes a good hour to copy all these files on this card, this game. Time gal, there's quite a few files. It might just take an hour, it might be like 30 or 40 minutes, it takes a while. But whenever I tried this prior to doing these changes, this is where I would get, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes in, and then it would get to a large file, and the screen would just go black, it would freeze, and then it would reboot. And it would happen every single time relentlessly. Nearly always at the same point with particular large files. It's the main reason why I went on this crusade here of trying to stabilise this card further. You know, we swapped out the caps, it was a lot better after doing that, but there was something more needed, and the ALS chips were a big part of that, but also on this board, the final part of it was also those resistor arrays. So I think I'm in danger of creating an infinite time loop here and destroying the entire fabric of space-time or something similar. And this is actually the video I'm editing, which is the one you're watching now. Yeah, figure that out. And one of the files I'm importing here, look at this, 11 hours remaining. Yeah, so anybody who thinks these videos take me 2 minutes to edit, think again. It's going to be 11 hours before that's imported, and then it's going to take me, probably with the amount of footage I've got, about 2 hours or more probably 3 hours I would think to edit it, and then it's going to take about an hour to upload it and finish it all off. There we go, that did take about 40 odd minutes if I'm honest, but it copied it, no issues at all. And as I say, previously I could try that time after time after time and it would always reboot, you know, with a black screen. And there's a quick look at the underneath of that board there. You can see got 2 resistor arrays fitted there. The ground point is the first pin there, that's where the dot on the resistor array goes. 3K3. And because I couldn't get to 10 pin resistor arrays, I could only get 9 pin. We've got the 10th pin over here, another 3K3 resistor to the ground here, and the same with that one there. And they're just heat shrinked off to kind of protect them, I guess. And on this board, the chips here are 74LS245s. And as I briefly showed at the end of the A4000 Terrible Fire repair series there, it's booting on the A4000. It's a bit slow at booting because the Kickstart 3.1 ROMs on an A4000, it looks for the IDE drive for quite a while. Now you could negate that, you know, remove that delay with a terminator. I talked about this on some of the live streams as well. But if you stick that on there, it only takes a second or two before it gives up, and then it looks for the SCSI. And if we load Pinball Illusions AGA, so closing up the video here now, it's a really nice card, the A2091. You do get pretty good performance out of it. But with the SCSI2SD, you get about 1 meg per second, which isn't so great. If you get the later versions of the SCSI2SD, as I mentioned in the annotations earlier, you get better performance. You can get up to like 2 meg or 2.5 meg on the very latest versions of the SCSI2SD. But you lose the compatibility with WinUAE there. I think there's some drive parameters or settings and things that are stored on the actual SD card itself. So just bear that in mind, that there's kind of mileage in having a slower speed and having perhaps the version 5.1, which you can buy from places like Amiga Kit here in the UK, and it's relatively affordable actually from Amiga Kit. When you use one of these in an A4000, it gets bottlenecked. The reason being is the DMA stuff here depends on the 24-bit Zorro 2 RAM in your system. So when you stick it in an A4000, of course that's got Zorro 3 RAM that kind of takes precedent. So you then get this issue where it's unable to do DMA transfers, and it goes into kind of like a programmed I/O mode where everything is super slow, like 50k per second or something like that. In practice I saw more than 50k per second, but it's very low. But you can get around that. I think there's some I don't know, drivers or a patch or something that you can actually apply if you fit one of these in an A4000 to get better performance there. It's been a while since I labelled anything up like this, but this really needs it. It has consumed about 2 weeks of my life that I will never get back. Yeah, I christened the Booty McBooterson because it does boot all the time reliably. So thank you very much for watching, thank you for your support. If you can support the channel, please see the Patreon links below. You can also buy me a coffee on Ko-fi, there's a link for that down below. I hope you found the video interesting. I'll catch you in the next video.